Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence for that. I mean, the Russians have announced a 15% cut in social security spending for next year. They've announced a series of tax rises for next year. It's clear that this year the Russians have started to pay for this war in ways they didn't have to. Next year they're going to pay even more for it. The Russians have used up at least half of their existing sovereign wealth fund on the war. And that's not invested money. That's just money that's gone up in smoke, quite literally. And so the Russian economy will struggle next year. It's had an immediate boost because of the shift to war production. But that's a very inefficient way of boosting an economy, as anyone will tell you over the last 100 years. If it has to be done, it has to be done. But it's not an efficient way of creating, new jobs and new industries. So the Russian economy will begin to struggle next year, as will its manpower problem. And one of the things that's being said in Western capitals is that, if we can help Ukraine get through to next year, then by the middle to end of next year and into 2026, the Russians will really be feeling it. Well, I mean, that's true, at least statistically that is true. But if Putin is prepared to get weapons from all of his friends and to use foreign troops to defend his own territory, if his pride is not sufficiently hurt by doing all those things to keep on doing it, who's to say that they won't carry on?
Can we just talk a little bit about Moldova? In just a few days, there are votes in a combined presidential election and referendum on joining the European Union. Russia has been trying to restore its influence over Moldova for years now. How much significance does the future of Moldova have for Ukraine?
Oh, it's really important because Moldova is that little territory to the west of Ukraine. And there's the Transnistrian Republic, which is sort of Russian breakaway or self-declared breakaway republic, Transnistria, which is the old basis along the Dniester River. It's the old basis of the 14th Army, the old Soviet 14th Army. And a lot of the Russian speakers there who are virulently pro-Russian, pro-Putin are the officers and their families who retired there. And Moldova is a very small country, very vulnerable. And if the Russians, as they originally intended, had come westwards across Ukraine through Mariupol and then to the land bridge in Crimea and then up to Mykolaiv and then Odessa to grab the port on the western part of the Black Sea, they'd have carried on going another 50 miles to Moldova. And Transnistria would have declared itself then part of Russia. And the Russians would have then, as it were, destabilized the rest of Moldova, and that would have been part of the new Russian empire that Putin clearly wants to build. That's the obvious idea. There is a pro-European, pro-democratic government in Ukraine, in Moldova, which Putin hates because he used to have a puppet government in there, and they've done all they can to destabilize Moldova. The European Union have tried what they can to help, and they've given financial support. But Moldova is such a very small country that the vote that's taking place this weekend on the 20th, the 17th, 3 days time, the vote that will take place will be very, very critical. And there's so much dirty tricks been going on with this election. We'll have to see how they get on with it. It will be a contested result, I'm sure, whatever it is. And the possibilities of violence in Moldova, starting from next week, can't be ruled out, sadly.
Yeah, Mike, Mark Rutte, the new Secretary General of NATO, has been to NATO's military headquarters. He's also been to the US military base in Wiesbaden in Germany, where Ukraine aid will be coordinated. He's been very robust about the alliance's support for Ukraine and refusal to be intimidated by Russia. Can he really get things moving and moving fast?
Well, he's determined to try. Yeah, the Wiesbaden meeting and the base at Wiesbaden is the European replacement for the Ramstein arrangement. So Ramstein is the big American base where all the coordination has been done so far. And what Mark Rutte is trying to do is to Europeanize the whole process, to take some of the pressure off the United States, to show that the Europeans can do it as well as the Americans, and that they don't have to do it all. And the Wiesbaden arrangement is an attempt to help the Europeans create a coordinating centre. In a way, it's an attempt to Trump-proof the future of NATO's support to Ukraine if Trump were to win the American elections. And a lot of good things can go on there. The problem is that without America's inputs, it doesn't matter whether you organise it from Ramstein or Wiesbaden, without American inputs, the Europeans haven't got enough to give quickly enough. to Ukraine.
You were at NATO's military headquarters in Mons in Belgium around the same time that Mark Rutte was passing through. And I know you met the Deputy Supreme Allied Commander, Europe. Did he give you a sense of where he's at and his thinking about the challenges facing NATO and the military alliance at the moment?
Yeah, I think Dissacre, Deputy Supreme Commander Europe, was very clear about that. Admiral Blount, British Admiral. And he was very coherent, and he gripped the issues that NATO has got to deal with a bigger range of challenges now, from basic military capacity, the number of enablers that it's got, transport, air transport, refueling, logistics. I mean, NATO is not good enough at any of those things. It relies far too much on the Americans. So European NATO nations have got to do more, right through to grasping the problems of space, where the issues of space for warfare have become much more complex, because space, low Earth orbit, for instance, has got about 8,000 satellites in it at the moment, but most of them are now privately owned. And it's the private sector which is calling the shots in low Earth orbit. And the military have got to somehow find ways of leveraging what they can get from the private sector and integrate that into future battle plans. But he was very clear on what their tasks were. And he was also very clear on how little time there is to get this ready. We don't have a decade to think about all this, getting this right, as we used to think in the mid 2010s, 2015. We thought, oh, we've got at least a decade. Well, we haven't. We've got 2 or 3 years before these things have either got to be there or not, because the challenges that we're facing in European security, now that Europe is involved in a shooting war, are coming at us pretty soon.
Did he give you any insight into his thinking on Ukraine and the challenges facing the alliance there?
I think on Ukraine, he was taking the standard line that we NATO are doing all that we can, and that NATO is the right sort of coordination mechanism to put all this stuff together. But of course, what he can't say, and as Dissacre is a military officer, he can't, as it would, dictate the political commitment of NATO to all of this. All he can say is that the militaries are very good at coordinating what they can offer, and that is true. And as Dissacre, his job, in a sense, is to be the chief operating officer for the integrated alliance, 32 nations. And of course, he said that it's much more complex. NATO used to be 12, then 16. Now it's 32, double that number. But he said it's quite interesting what sort of contributions even the smaller nations can make. And they're all quite anxious to make a contribution, particularly the smaller ones, to show that they matter. And so he was actually rather interesting on both the challenges, but also the opportunities of creating integrated alliance structures. But that doesn't get you over the political problem or the managerial problem of just having 32 delegations, all of whom wanting jobs and roles and something to do that's useful in the headquarters.
Mike, it's been good talking to you. Let's talk again soon. Thank you so much for your time. You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Chabot. If you'd like to support us, you can subscribe now or listen to Times Radio or go to thetimes.co.uk. My thanks to our producer today, Louis Sykes, and to you for watching. Bye-bye.